Okay, guys, in news that surprises nobody, Ben Simmons looks like he's coming back to the Sixers. Let's talk about it. Whose fault was all this mess, and how surprised are we? It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. And if you want to join and join the live streams when we do the post games and other things, make sure you join the channel below. All right, in news that surprises nobody, Ben Simmons is coming back to the Philadelphia 76ers at some point. According to Rich Paul, he's talking to Shams and Woj, letting them know that they've been working day and night to figure out a way to get Ben Simmons back. You know what this comes down? Turns out that like $31 million is a lot of money. And Ben Simmons doesn't have any real leverage at this point because he's basically kind of folded, letting them know he really wants that money. I mean, I was kind of interested to see if Ben Simmons would go through with this when this whole saga began, where he said that he'd be willing to like miss out on all the money he'd be making. But then that little news tidbit that came out a couple weeks ago, when it turns out he was not going to get a check for like $8 million. And all of a sudden you see the little news thing come out from Rich Paul saying that we're going to try to figure out how to get that money back. No, you don't get that money back. You don't get that money. If you don't perform part of your contract, then you don't get the money that's promised you in the contract. It's just not how it works. And so this news today is honestly a little bit hilarious to me because it really shows that the whole grandstand about not coming back. I've played my last day in Philadelphia. I've sold my house in Philly and all these things. It was baloney. You know, Ben Simmons is coming back because he wants the money. Now, for the Sixers, that's going to be interesting. I mean, you've got a guy that said he doesn't want to play with them again. You have the situation after the playoffs last year where Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid made comments about Ben Simmons. And by the way, they were right. Nothing that Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid said was incorrect about Ben Simmons. He was a major reason they lost that series. If he does literally anything in some of those series on the offensive end, if he could even make 50% of his free throws, the Sixers, who had the best record in the Eastern Conference last year, would be moving on. You know, so Ben Simmons gets his feelings hurt after that series, but it was his own doing. So, I mean, there's a lot of people you could argue about who's to blame, and Ben Simmons and Rich Paul and their whole camp is likely going to tell you that it's, and they already have really, that it's Doc Rivers' fault. It's Joel Embiid's fault. How can they say this about Ben Simmons? Well, guess what? Ben Simmons needs to toughen up. And this whole saga proves it. Because if Ben Simmons was as tough as he thinks he is and says he is, he'd be willing to go through with losing this money. Because guess what? Eventually, the Sixers would move him. Right now, they don't have to. It's not even the regular season yet, and he's already folded. If Ben Simmons went into this season and said, I'm not playing, and he actually went through with it and lost the money that he said that he was willing to lose, then he'd build some leverage. And guess what? If the Sixers start not performing very well, or if they start losing, if their defense takes a tick down because they don't have Ben Simmons' perimeter defense and all the things that he does, if they started losing, guess what? It would create some leverage for Ben Simmons. But and that's the guy we're going to talk about in a little bit. But Ben Simmons, by just folding right now already, I mean, he's just going to be playing for the Sixers this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's traded at some point because that's what Shams and Woj said in their tweets, that the Sixers will continue to look for trades. But I wouldn't count on a trade happening from what Woj is saying, that they're, and you know, these reports that are coming out for what they're asking for. It's pretty astronomical. I mean, they were trying to get 3 picks and 3 pick swaps from Portland and CJ McCollum, I think it was. And that's just not going to happen. You're just not going to get that many picks for a player that's not even playing for you. So the Sixers really don't have any leverage. This was really the only thing that was going to happen, was Simmons was going to come back or just not play, because the asking price for him has been astronomical for a player who has not proved that he can play playoff basketball, that he doesn't have it when it comes to like clutch play in the playoffs. He just doesn't, and he hasn't shown it. And so who's going to give like 3 first-round picks for this guy? I wouldn't. He's definitely not the number one option. The best player on the Philadelphia 76ers, and we all know, is Joel Embiid. And like Joel Embiid says, everything they've done is to kind of make things work for Ben Simmons, and it still hasn't happened. I bet you today Sixers fans would trade Ben Simmons straight up for Jimmy Butler like that. I promise you. All right, we're going to talk about who I think is really at fault for a lot of this. But before we do that, let's talk about manscaped.com. Do you know that what's spookier than seeing a black cat on Halloween? It's shaving your balls with anything other than Manscaped. When it comes to below-the-waist grooming, there's no need to carve your pumpkins this Halloween because Manscaped is here to upgrade your grooming experience. Go from bite-sized candy bar to king-size candy bar and join 2 million men worldwide by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code HoopsNerd20. That's HoopsNerd20. Make sure you use it, guys. It'll save you 20 to 30 bucks. It's great. Let's see. The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker, a total game changer for your men's hygiene arsenal. I use it. It's great. It's fantastic, guys. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code HoopsNerd20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code HoopsNerd20, 20 at manscaped.com. Say trick or treat to your beautiful new Halloweeny with manscaped.com. Guys, go do it. I would appreciate it. It supports the channel. And it's a great product. I use it. It's great. You can get boxers, cologne. They have all sorts of stuff. So go to manscaped.com, check it out. Use the promo code. It's fantastic. All right, guys. This whole saga with Ben Simmons has been honestly kind of a joke. And really, I mean, the number one person at fault for this whole situation is Ben Simmons. But his play has made it so that they are willing to trade him. And basically, he doesn't really have a leg to stand on because what's he going to say? There's just not a team out there that's going to give up big pieces for him. And we found that out last offseason. And this is the guy that I think actually deserves a lot of flack for this situation is Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey is going into this situation asking for ridiculous return on Ben Simmons, and he's just not going to get it. He's not going to get it. I'm sure there are, and we know that there are rumors, there's 5 or 6 GMs out there that are interested in him from probably lower market teams, but they are not going to sell the farm to get Ben Simmons when they know what he has done in the playoffs year after year, just not shown up. Last year was especially terrible with the 35% free throw shooting. Obviously everyone's seen the highlight of the not taking the dunk, literally standing under the basket and not taking the shot, costing them, the game. It's bad news. And there's not a team out there that's going to throw away their best number one guy for Ben Simmons. There are some teams out there I think that should look at Ben Simmons, though. I do think that if you can make a CJ McCollum, Ben Simmons trade happen, that works for both teams. I think that trade with Sacramento, whether it's De'Aaron Fox or Halliburton or something like that, Halliburton and Buddy Hield for Simmons, to me, those kind of make sense because it helps with both teams. Simmons is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He does a lot of great things. We all know everything about Ben Simmons. Everyone knows the shortcomings with Ben Simmons. Everyone knows what he's good at. We all know what he is. And at this point, I don't think he's getting better. But Daryl Morey deserves some flack for this situation. He deserves flack for what happened in Houston because he created that fallout in Houston, and now he's creating it in Philadelphia. But Daryl Morey likes to talk about the advanced analytics, and and I enjoy the advanced analytics. They're great. I think they can help you make decisions on the margins that can help you win games and find players that probably have more value than they, people probably thought they should. But Daryl Morey created that toxic environment in Houston by just making every single move based off of small analytic differences. And by the time he was gone, there was zero chemistry on that team. James Harden is demanding out, and they fall apart. And now they're rebuilding, and they've got some nice pieces. But that rebuild was started with Daryl Morey destroying every sense of chemistry on that team. And chemistry doesn't win championships, but chemistry keeps teams together. It's something you got to consider. Not everything is like fantasy basketball. And Daryl Morey treating the Houston Rockets like fantasy basketball, and now the Philadelphia 76ers, it's blowing up in his face again. It just is. Multiple times in Houston, players were demanding trades out of that place, and Daryl Morey not worrying about chemistry or team makeup or player personalities and things like that was a major part of that. And now we see it in Philadelphia. Last year, And, one thing you've got to understand if you're Daryl Morey is this guy right here has a fragile ego. He's a fragile guy. He's not willing to get better. And if you tell him that he's not better, he pouts and he demands a trade. Like last season when Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid were talking about some of his shortcomings, which were very valid, he falls apart. Daryl Morey has to be cognizant of that. And, the worst kept secret ever last season was Daryl Morey trying to trade Ben Simmons for James Harden, which was just not going to happen. The owner of the Houston Rockets just did not have incentive to trade with Daryl Morey, who, they had a falling out, didn't like each other. So Daryl Morey, who likes to toot his own horn and talk about how great he is, created this situation with Ben Simmons. He did. And now, not understanding the fragility of this guy's ego has caused a problem. Ben Simmons is what he is, and he's a nice defensive player. He's got a nice toolbox of things. He's a great transition guy. He can do a lot of really nice things. There are some serious shortcomings. One is obviously the shooting, and two is the ego. This guy has just not really improved the last 4 or 5 years. He is what he is. He's basically a finished product his rookie year. And so Daryl Morey, by being public with his trade things, by leaking everything, by treating every player like they're a chess piece on a board, or they're just a stat line on a fantasy football or basketball sheet, has created this situation. And now he's got to deal with it. And there's no team out there that's going to be like, oh, I'd love to make Daryl Morey feel better. Mr. Go off to Sloan Conference and brag about his analytic achievements. No one's going to go out there and try to support this guy or help him out. And so Daryl Morey created this situation. He's not as good as he thinks he is. And he deserves to be blamed for a lot of this. It's to me, it's a 50-50. It's Ben Simmons for his play, not improving, the fragile ego, and it's Daryl Morey for just being the most arrogant GM in the NBA outside of Danny Ainge, and treating everyone like they're not a human being, to be quite honest. And so this is a bad situation in Philadelphia. They're still going to be great because they have Joel Embiid, who's an MVP candidate. They have nice pieces around him that will, the makeup of that team is really interesting. And by the way, I think Matisse Thybulle might be a better defender than Ben Simmons. And so Daryl Morey has to figure this out. He screwed it up big time. And there you go. All right. Before we go, we got to give a shout out to our all-stars. These are the guys that make everything happen. And if you haven't already and you want to join the channel and support, make sure you click the button below and support the channel. All right, let's give a shout out to Kelsey Hamer, the Hammer, and one Anton Warren, Ezekiel Ricibe, the man from down under, JT Buckets Wardell, Austin R. Grant, editor extraordinaire, Eric C., the C stands for champion, Donald Schooley, schooling all of us, DW to CB, Darren Williams to Carlos Boozer, Jorge Arrizaga, mi amigo de abajo, Lee Christensen, driving the lane, Ryan the Legend Perry, Justin Time, Justin Ty H, Patrick Kubo, the connoisseur, Robert Hall of Fame, and DW Jazz going all the way. Guys, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Join the channel. I would appreciate it. I will talk to you next time.